Hari Om. So I am continuing my part 9 in English, comparative religions and Hinduism versus Christianity. Therefore, it has been well established that under the laws of attraction, if you start aiming or if you start worshipping something of sorrows and sufferings and that type of structure, you'll be attracting those electrons. And then they are negative electrons. Definitely, we don't like sorrow because in our brief stay of our Atma in our body in this world for 90 years or 100 years, every one of us has to have like a good, a livable life, a happy life, a life with sufficient comfort, is it not? A life of happiness, a life where our expectations are fulfilled. We are not there to suffer it out. That is the true. But whatever it is, the prarabdha karma, I have explained all these things very clearly. So, based on your prarabdha karma, your life is going to be there, and that plus or minus 20% depends on the negative or the positive energies which you are attracting or visualizing. Now, I am going to give you some standard examples. See, a lot of people have asked me, sir, you are talking all these things, but first of all, let us understand the Christian Europe, where are successful, they are happy, they have made lot of money, and then they migrated to Americas, North, South, and the Canadas, all are Europeans. How is that? How is that? Come on, explain. I am going to explain. I am going to statistics. I am going to give you all correct figures which is available on the internet, in the Google, and then you yourself will decide. First of all, Jesus was not an European if Jesus had existed. He was from the Middle East. Now, I will give you a concrete example. If you take Russia, Russia had its rulers. They were called as Tsar. You can have CZAR or TSAR also. Tsar and the Tsarina, the Rani, the Raja and the Rani. Now, if you go to Netflix, I am quoting everything from Netflix and from YouTube, from documentaries, where historians would come in between and give their opinion supporting what's going on. It is not. It is something like a newsreel. We used to have, in earlier cinema theaters when we were young, we used to see before the cinema starts a newsreel. Likewise, all documentaries, evidences. So in the Netflix, I saw the movie called The Last Tsar. It's not a movie, it's a real happening. And they have also a documentary, 100% documentary called The Russian Revolution. The last Tsar and the Rani, they died, they were assassinated in 1918. They were the rulers till then. They were ruling Russia. You see, what happened was, there was a Russian Orthodox Church. And all these, the European rulers, the kings, they were all marrying with one another. An English princess will marry a Russian prince. A Spanish with French, or French with Norwegian, Norwegian with Portugal, Portugal with Swedish. So the royal family, just like India we have states, they also had states, the Europeans. And their livelihood of a Christianity, in my opinion, came only from the 11th, 12th century AD, after the Common Era. So what was happening was, the last Tsar, he was, and his family, the Tsar, the Tsarina, their 4 daughters and 1 son. The son was born last, and Rasputin was some philosophical advisor, a Christian philosophical advisor, and all of them would used to wear such a big cross, a cross which would be dangling. Now I used to think, are they not carrying negative energies? Yes. A cross is a symbol of death, where Romans and the early Europeans were crucifying everybody on a cross. Or they used to burn them on a pyre with firewood, and then the evil persons they would call, and they will burn them. And what happened? It is so sympathetic and so agonizing to see the king, the emperor and the empress and their family of 5 plus 2, 7, and some 4 assistants they had, pet workers. They were all, when the revolution started by Lenin, they were all shifted from Moscow, from Russia to Siberia. special purpose house was there. You can see that movie, beautiful movie. Lovely, it has been taken. And then finally, the Bolsheviks, a part of the Russian Revolution group, they are one ethnic race. They call themselves as Bolsheviks, coming from Siberia, and they call the Europeans as whites. They, under the orders of Lenin, massacred this young family. The Tsar was 50, his wife Tsarina was only 45, and all their young children, 4 plus 1, including the son. They were sentenced to death, and with their dangling crosses and all, they were taken to the basement, and he reads out that you are being sentenced to death. See the shock. A person showing as living in the palaces of Russia, then shifted to this house of special purpose because the revolution had started, and he was informed it is not safe in Russia, was moved to Siberia, and after a couple of years, I think, was massacred along with his family, his wife, and all the 5 children. And that fellow, the assassins, the revolutionary, one of those revolutionary section leader, and his shooters, all rebels, shooting them, mowing them down. After they put them here in a sort of a house arrest for about a couple of years. You see that documentary. It's very nice. It's very really taken. Then their bodies were recovered from Siberia, and Boris Yeltsin, after seeing this agonizing crime, he gave them a decent burial in a Russian Orthodox church. Boris Yeltsin. And even Putin, the present Russian president, also gave them some respect, I was told. They all show that. You can read it, you can see it in this movie. Nicely taken, very factually taken, that's what. But it is very sorrowful movie. What I am saying, where were these Russian Orthodox Church priests who used to come to the palace before the revolution, when the Tsar and the Tsarina were living very happily along with their children? Where were they? What saved them? Nothing saved them. They died a horrible death, living such a palatial, such a luxurious life, massacred children. Aged, the son was only 13, the daughter were 11, 12 and 14 and 18. What sort of tyranny is it? What is a revolution? They should have been kept under house arrest or thrown in exile. Something like that. These orders come from Lenin, and Lenin is treated as with respect by all of us as if he is the president of Russia. Is it right? Is it right? Now, they had their youngest 5th child as son after so much of worship. When the child was born, he had a disease called, a funny disease, hemophilia. That is, the blood will not clot like a normal man. The blood has to clot if there is an injury, a cut. The blood after some time should clot there so that the further flow is arrested. But it appears most of the European families do have this bleeding. Most of these European royal families, that's what the commentators say, and you can also see it in YouTube's or in Google, how it came. They were all staunch Catholics. The French was a Catholic country, Spanish, Vatican, Germany. These are all, except England, where they were all Protestants. So much was bleeding, the bleeding, that by disease they had that bleeding. Why? I do not know. Were they worshipping a bleeding cross or a bleeding person on a cross? See, because these electrons behave like that for several centuries, they were having the royal family. It's not this boy alone. It appears to be a common disease. That's what the commentator says in the movie. When you see that, you please see the last, LAST, the final. That means last means the final Tsars. It's what it says. And then another documentary called Russian Revolution. That will not be in as detailed, but it's all newsreel. They were all in the olden times. Also, they had movies in 1820s and 40s. Also, they had some movie type, because when the war was there, for example, the Second World War, First World War, the army used to take some movies and send it to their headquarters so that they can see what's happening on the battleground. So it is so pathetic, so agonizing, so sorrowful, so sad to see a very beautiful, handsome family being massacred with all big crosses. And Russian Orthodox Church and the pastors and the priests and the cardinals, whosoever they call their names, were all blessing them when they were in Russia, when they were in Moscow. See, this is the common thing which happens in the royal families, this hemophilia. They also call hemobilia. How it can happen? Bleeding. Not only that. You come to France. I was seeing that movie, Louis the 14th. Louis the 14th was a very successful king, but in about 3 years' time, the palace of Versailles, he constructs a very massive palace. I went to that palace also, I saw as a tourist. It's a massive outside Paris. Now you have the Eiffel Towers before it, somewhere near it. Now in that massive palace, all the royals die of vomiting blood. About 40 royals, there were royals also living in his vast palace rooms, housed under the permission of the king. They used to move together, the royals, the nobles they call. 40 royals die within 3 years by vomiting blood. Everybody vomits blood. And they were all strict Catholics with their crosses bent upon Catholics. And that King Louis burns the Bible of Protestants. He forcefully converts those people, even including the nobles staying in his palace, to Catholics. He sends his army of musketeers to Paris and burns down the houses of Protestants. He asks them to convert to Catholics. If they do not, they will not be given any government jobs, and their houses were torched, their Bibles were burnt. See the casteism there also. And he calls himself as chosen by God. In that, you can see that movie. The movie is called Versailles in Netflix. Versailles, Versailles. It's a very big palace constructed by Louis the 14th. Then Louis the 16th, the French people could no longer tolerate all these things, and they guillotined him, executed him, he, his wife, most of the royals, including Antonio Velogier, who gave the world the physics of matter cannot be created or destroyed. So I am telling you with authentic proof how many people die vomiting blood even in that Versailles palace over a period of years. How this fellow King Louis the 14th massacred Protestants, and he wanted to be Catholics, and he calls himself as the chosen by God, and he comes for blessing. He comes to bless, and that on that blessing chair he sits on the throne in Paris. He comes and he says, I alone can heal because I am chosen by God, not even the Vatican. And then when he starts healing, there was a massacre there. There was all these French people wanted to kill the king. Shooting took place and he escapes. King 14th escapes, but Louis the 16th is caught and then guillotined, killed. See, these are all the inside stories. And the filth that takes place, no morality to the lowest. That's in Bible also, Lot, one of the nephews of Abraham, begets children through his own daughters. It is there. I mean, those things I will discuss later. But the palace is filled because this King Louis the 14th has so much of concubines. Who is the legitimate child of 15th is very even difficult. So much of concubines. And his wife, the queen, also is not moral. It's all shown in the movie. You can see that movie. The factual, historical facts. See, such is their way of life, and they wanted to put their belief in Vatican. Vatican supports the king. Vatican says only France can help them to remain as a Catholic country because others are very weak. So they wanted Louis the 13th, his father, Louis the 13th, to have only male sons, and he could not have male sons, and he allows his wife to copulate with another normal man, and through them they beget two sons. These two sons are, one is the Louis 14th and his brother Philippe. And it is atrocious. They are all one is homosexual, one has it is, you cannot just dream of it. Atrocities, morally filthy. And they say the Vatican comes, the cardinal also comes, he takes a lot of wine, and they have to have the support of Vatican so that they can live with the public, with the people at large. Vatican is more political than spiritual at that time. They decide who the king should be and whom they should support. When Ottoman, the Muslim empire, tries to invade Austria, Vatican decides that France has to support Austria or not. See, everything appears to be more political than spiritual. Therefore, I didn't find any spirituality in this European churchianity. I didn't find any, for namesake, that's what Einstein said. I'll read out the Einstein's letter. For namesake, they have somebody called Christianity, somebody called Jesus, and through them they try to develop, by giving false information, develop political power. There is nothing spirituality. Absolutely, there is nothing spirituality, and so much of tragic events have taken place right from the 3rd century Constantine times, when Alacri looted Rome, sacked Rome. I can tell you all those things in part by part, till such time, Bhuyat Tavat Shubhamangalam. Thank you.